Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about the Game Awards 2023 Jeff Keighley Fest, as we know it. We're going to be going over the Game Award winners, the more important categories at least. We're going to go over some of the big announcements that were made. We also have some other news to cover that happened in the last 2 weeks. Sorry we canceled last week's podcast without any notice. I have a lot of stuff going in my life and I had to cancel to make things work. But we're covering the news. We would have been covering Invincible on last week's podcast. We're going to be doing that on next week's podcast because the Game Awards kind of supersedes that. We didn't want to wait another week to cover that. But we also have some stuff to talk about on the horizon. So like I said, some other news stories, some other trailers, and then all the Game Awards stuff. That's our slate for today. Let's get started with our On the Horizon.
On the horizon.
On the Horizon is where we talk about stuff coming up in the next week or so. I added one from what should have been on last week's. No, actually, I added 3 from last week. Let's start with those. So, on Thursday, December 14th, which is tomorrow from when we're recording this, but probably yesterday or the day after, from the point that, this podcast goes up. But Yu Yu Hakusho is coming to Netflix. We talked about the trailer for this before. We talked about Yu Yu Hakusho, the anime and the manga, and being fans of that. We talked a little bit about Tagashi and his kind of writing process and stuff, and that he was involved in Hunter x Hunter when we did all of that. Well, another thing I found out is that Tagashi is apparently directly involved in the same way that kind of Ichiro Oda was for the One Piece adaptation. So that hopefully that's a good sign. I don't know. It's a little different. It's not like a Western adaptation. It's like a Japanese-made adaptation. But I'm going to give it a shot because I love Yu Yu Hakusho.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yu Yu Hakusho is great.
And that is Thursday, December 14th on Netflix. Then on Friday, December 15th, Wonka comes out in movie theaters. Mixed feelings? I don't know. It looks like it might be fun.
Fantastic. I don't know.
It looks like it could be fun. It looks like it could be just another attempt to do the Wonka franchise. And I don't know, the last one I had a good experience because I actually went to a screener for it. And when I went, they gave me free candy. So they bribed me.
Nice.
But,
was it
but the movie
Wonka
wasn't
brand
great.
candy?
Yeah, it was all the Wonka brand candy. It was like a huge amount of it.
Nice. I mean, this is by the director of Paddington 2. I don't know. I think it looks fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I think they really nailed the vibe of this whimsical holiday film. I don't know. I think it looks great.
Yeah, I think it looks good, but I have some concerns because of, the last Wonka.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the last Wonka, nobody talks about that. Anyway.
Next up, we have Reacher, which is coming also on Friday, December 15th to Amazon Prime. You haven't watched Reacher, right?
No.
Okay, so it's just a really fun action series on Amazon, so it'll be nice to have it back. Just a big guy kicking ass. That's basically it. Nothing too complicated. But that's coming on Friday, December 15th to Amazon Prime. Then on Sunday, December 17th, which is one of my nephew's birthdays, by the way, Archer Into the Cold comes to FX, FXX, and Hulu. This is, I believe, the last, 3 episodes, the run of the last 3 episodes of the series, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Then on Wednesday, December 20th, Percy Jackson and the Olympians comes to Disney+. The big deal about this is that the author was heavily involved in the production of this, and the adaptations, they made 2 movies before that covered the first 2 books in the series, but they were really, really bad adaptations, really not faithful adaptations. And this one's supposed to be really faithful to the books. So that is coming on Wednesday, December 20th to Disney+. On Thursday, December 21st, Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire comes to Netflix. So Zack Snyder cult members of the world unite. Your time is now. On Friday, December 22nd, What If starts on Disney Plus. It's interesting. They're doing an episode a day. They're not releasing them one a week. They're going through the 9 episodes just straight through. So it's going to start December 22nd and end on, that would be December 31st, right? On New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's going to be What If Season 2. If you've listened to this podcast, you know that neither of us were too keen on What If Season 1, except episode 4. That was great. But in general, wasn't a great series. The trailers have looked pretty good for Season 2. They looked pretty good for Season 1, and then that didn't turn out that well. So we'll have to see what that's like. But that is coming on Friday, December 22nd on Disney Plus. Also on Friday, December 22nd, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom comes to movie theaters. This is, I believe, the last of the old DCEU, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's the final movie of the old regime, and the next big DC movie is going to be Superman Legacy, so...
Yeah. So this is the end of the old DCEU.
Yes.
Also coming to theaters on Friday, December 22nd is The Iron Claw. We talked about the trailer for this a while ago. It's based on a true story. It's got Zac Efron in it, and it's like about a family of professional wrestlers, and it's not exactly a happy story. No. It's a very, very distressing story. So if you want to go and watch like a critically acclaimed, very sad drama, check out The Iron Claw on Friday, December 22nd in theaters. That is it for our On the Horizon segment. And now we're moving on to what the rest of this podcast is, which is a giant news segment, our On Beat segment.
On Beat.
As I mentioned, On Beat is our news segment. We're going to start off with a few stories and then go into Game Awards and other trailers and stuff like that. Let's start off with some news. The Boys Mexico was announced. It is going to be starring Gael Garcia Bernal and Diego Luna, who previously starred together in Itamami Tembien, which is like a famous indie movie from 20 years ago that Alfonso Cuarón, the guy that did like the third Harry Potter movie, he directed that. And it was like a really cult favorite movie that he did like right before he jumped into Harry Potter. And the two of them are back together for this new take on The Boys, and it's a Spanish language take, and it's from the writer of Blue Beetle, Gareth Dunnett Alcocer. So interesting.
I mean, sure.
I mean, this isn't like a new adaptation that just happens to be Mexican, like in the same way they do like The Office or something. This is supposed to be somewhat connected, at least.
This is a spin-off. My initial reaction is, do we need another spin-off of The Boys? I
yes.
feel like...
Amazon does.
Yeah, Amazon does. I feel like, Gen V turned out very well, so like this could too, so I'm not going to like just dismiss it, but I just got a general feeling of like, I kind of had my feel of just like the cynical universe, and do we just need another cynical show stacked on top of it? I don't know.
The thing that has me interested is the cast. Gael Garcia Bernal and Diego Luna. Besides Itamami Tembien, Gael Garcia Bernal you might know from Werewolf by Night. He played the lead in that, and Diego Luna is Andor from Star Wars. So if you watched Rogue One or the Andor series, that's the character of Andor is Diego Luna. So it's a good cast and an interesting cast, and a cast that's worked together before. That kind of makes the whole thing interesting to me. Next piece of news we have is E3 is dead. It's officially dead. R.I.P. Yes. E3.
Yeah, it's dead.
I think we live in a world where we don't need it anymore.
Yeah, the writing's been on the wall for a while. I mean, especially COVID essentially killed E3. It was dying before that. I believe in 2019, Sony dropped out of presenting at E3. Nintendo had stopped doing press conferences for a while. Nintendo still attended E3 to have booths and presentations on the show floor. But they
to take meetings and stuff because there'd just be all the press was in town and
to take meetings. Oh yeah, absolutely. But they stopped doing live press conferences. Sony apparently opted out entirely. They just weren't there in 2019. It was okay, was that just for a year? But, then they canceled E3 in 2020 because of COVID. They believe they brought E3 back for 2021.
Wasn't it gone last year too? 2022?
Yes, they brought it back for 2021. Sony still did not show up or attend. Yeah, and then it was canceled last year. And
I don't think the industry needs it anymore. There's so many other events.
Yeah.
It used to be like Gamer Christmas. That was kind of the way people referred to it. It was like, everybody got
It was
up,
like-
watched all the conferences. It was exciting. It was the one time a year that we got all the big game news and stuff. Now we have so many conferences, so many events, so many direct events. Like Nintendo does their Nintendo Directs and Sony does digital presentations, and so many people do that. And I think those things are just going to go on as normal. I'm sure
Microsoft
come
is like
June
still
we're
like
going to
the
get a
only
Nintendo
company.
Direct.
Microsoft is still the only company that was doing like the big info dumps in June at like E3.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure we're still going to get a Nintendo Direct in June. I'm sure we're going to get like a Sony State of Play type thing around June. I'm sure we're going to get another Devolver like short film in June. Like all that stuff's still going to happen. It's just E3 itself just doesn't matter anymore. But since it's gone now, I thought we'd recount, some of the way we look back on E3. So I've actually been to like 3 or 4 E3 events. Like I've actually gone to them. I was able to kind of sneak in and enjoy and play them and stuff. Super crowded, but it was a really fun time at a certain point in my life. I wouldn't want to go now. It's just too packed, too many people. But it was a really fun at that point in my life. But honestly, when I look back at E3, what I look back at is it's kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon experience. I would get up earlier than I normally would because I was pretty much nocturnal at the time, but I would get up early, watch the conferences, and then sit around on like gaming forums, like talking about everything that was showing for like days. And that was my E3 experience. It was like, like when you're like a little kid and you get up and you're in pajamas and you sit in front of the TV or you lay on your belly in front of the TV and watch like all your Saturday morning cartoons and you're super excited. That's that's my memory of E3 is that,
Right, yeah, exactly.
It's just
that's
either
my memory of
watching
that.
TV when it was like being broadcast on like G4 or something, or like watching it on a computer and then being on the forums and chatting with people about it. That's my memories of E3. And I think just that kind of experience, like being something very special and unique, is gone in the same way that like the idea of game secrets is gone, like now you know everything about a game the second it comes out.
One thing that's kind of like it's I did appreciate that we got information from all the major players at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Where like that doesn't necessarily happen anymore.
We'll still get it in this roughly the same time, but it might be like weeks between each other and stuff.
Right?
Day,
Instead of like a 3-day period where like you got like all this news. I don't know. It was just exciting that way.
I just don't think they can do that anymore. Like because they do so many events now that it's like nobody's going to save everything for that one event, and because of that, it's just not going to be an exciting event in the way it used to be.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's no real reason to save E3. It's kind of like it was a product of its time and it's no longer really necessary. But I look back upon it fondly,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That is it for our regular news, and now we're going to move on to Game Awards. So let's start things off with the winners of the Game Awards. We cut a bunch of the categories out because honestly, like neither of us really give a shit about who's like the streamer of the year or anything like that. None of that matters.
No.
None of the eSport awards matter to us, So we cut out everything that's kind of just not that interesting. And let's start out most anticipated game. The winner was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth from Square Enix.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Not for me, but
yeah,
I understand. Like I accept it, but it's not. I'm not anticipating it.
Let me ask you, what is your most anticipated game?
Whew.
What would you have awarded this category?
Of the ones that were nominated, the one that I'm most anticipating is the new Like a Dragon game, the Infinite Wealth. That's more interesting
coming
to
out
me.
in January, so yeah.
That's more interesting to me than Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. But honestly, like there isn't a lot coming out that I'm super interested in that I know about yet. I'm sure that's going to change early next year.
Oh, absolutely.
Next, we have Best Adaptation, and the winner, this was obvious. There's a few good ones in there, but this was obvious.
I was like, yeah, this is obvious. I mean, we covered this on the podcast.
Yeah.
You know it if you've been following us.
So for Best Adaptation, the winner is Pedro Pascal.
Yeah. Last one. No, it was damn good. It was a damn good show. I can't argue with that.
There are parts that, like, I saw comparison shots, and it's like almost like 1-to-1 from like the game. Like, it's such an accurate adaptation. And it's just a really high quality HBO show on top of that, so.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
They had like some other nominees that I thought like Castlevania Nocturne, which I was like, oh man, yeah, that would be awesome with that one. I mean, I can't argue with that.
The Last of Us is just too big. Yeah, Super Mario Brothers movie was fun as well.
Super Mario Brothers movie was...
The Last of Us was just a much deeper series.
Yes.
Best multiplayer game, the winner was Baldur's Gate 3 from Larian Studios.
Yep.
I have not played Baldur's Gate 3, but it won a lot of awards. Spoilers.
Yeah, it was clearly like the darling of the evening.
Yeah.
I haven't played it either, but I mean, from what I heard from people, it is a super fun game, especially if you're into like D&D.
And it does seem like a major multiplayer game.
Yeah.
All the stories I heard about people, when people were gushing about the game when it first came out, they were all about experiences they were having with friends online. So it makes sense to win for best multiplayer game. Whereas like, say, the one I would have maybe picked would have been like, because I haven't played Baldur's Gate 3, would have been like Super Mario Bros. Wonder. But that online mode for that is just kind of okay. It's not like, it's nothing like mind blowing,
Right, yeah, exactly.
Next up, we have Best Sports/Racing Game, and the winner was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC. No, it was for Forza Motorsport from Turn 10 Studios and Xbox Games.
I mean, sure. I don't even know what competition there was for this.
Yeah. Best Sim/Strategy Game. The winner is Pikmin 4 from Nintendo. Haven't played it, but I've heard good things.
I haven't played. Have you played any Pikmin games?
Yes. I played a little bit of Pikmin 1. I never got that far in it. And then I played Pikmin 3. I think I got to the last boss and got frustrated and stuff.
Really? Last boss was really fun.
There was like an escape part. There was a part where you had to like run away from it or something.
Yeah.
I kept dying and I was just like, I said, I'll get back to this later, and I never did.
I beat Pikmin 3. I thought it was a wonderful game. I haven't played Pikmin 4 yet. I don't have the game yet. I fully plan on getting it and playing it. I am happy to see Pikmin win an award. That's great for me.
You mentioned before earlier that it's funny that there were 3 Nintendo games in this category, which is a very non-Nintendo category.
It's a very non-Nintendo category, yet Nintendo dominated the category this year. Because along with Pikmin 4, they also had Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp and Fire Emblem Engage nominated for this category.
Yeah, that's just kind of interesting little side thing to that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Nintendo, Best Family Game, winner, obviously, Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
Yeah.
Great game. It's fun.
Yeah.
Very fun.
I mean...
Still haven't beaten it, but I'm close. I'm towards the end.
Best platformer released in years, but I mean, that's not surprising.
Well, it's every new Nintendo platformer is the best platformer released in years, right?
Yeah, but every new Mario. It's because Mario's at the top of the genre, and and one of the reasons I fanboy Mario games so much is because every new entry, they push the genre forward. They just keep trying to innovate and do such a fantastic job of doing it. Like, if you compare this to I don't want to dump on games, but because I thought Sonic Superstars is a fun game that came out that's very similar, in
style. Came out same day, right?
A few days earlier. A couple days. It was within days, same week. It's fine. It's fine, but it's not groundbreaking in any way. It's just kind of standard. When Mario Wonder is taking the same framework and doing such unique and crazy things with it, it's that's why I'm a Mario fan.
And Super Mario games are just better designed than Sonic games, period. I mean, Come on, let's not pretend. Nintendo has better level designers, just period.
You are ripping open, old 90s fanboy wars. Yeah.
Next up, we got Best Fighting Game, and the winner is Street Fighter 6. Another kind of no-duh, I'm sorry, Mortal Kombat's kind of oversaturated itself at this point. Everything else is kind of irrelevant right now, and then Street Fighter 6 came out as maybe the best entry since I don't know, 4, or not 4, the best Street Fighter entry since maybe 2, as far as people are talking about, the game.
Wow, yeah.
The game's got a lot of talk. There's a lot of stuff you can do in it. There's a lot of extra modes. It's just a very deep, full game.
They really went to not repeat the mistakes they did with Street Fighter 5, which was when Street Fighter V first came out,
made it like a game of service, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty bare bones too. There was like not a lot of modes or like characters or anything, and that trickled out. Like the final version of Street Fighter V is pretty great, but it didn't launch in that state. This launched with a lot more content than Street Fighter V did, and I think they learned a lesson from that.
Next on, another obvious winner, Best RPG, Baldur's Gate 3 from Larian Studios. As you mentioned, they're the darling of this year's show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was Baldur's Gate, and it's funny too because like Best RPG was a pretty packed field this year. You had Final Fantasy 16, you had Sea of Stars,
Starfield, the most beloved RPG ever.
Oh yeah.
Next up, we have Best Action Adventure, and surprisingly, this is the only award that this game got, and the winner is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Kind of blows my mind. This is the game that when it came out, everybody was like, this is just gonna steal like every award. When it comes up, it got one. It got one. Best Action Adventure game.
I mean, I'm glad it did win, but yeah, it's kind of crazy. Tears of the Kingdom got lunch eaten this year. That's fine. It's fine. We got to get AJ and Uma go up and accept an award.
And then get rushed off stage by Keeley after, because he used up too much time for Kojima.
That was, that was the big controversy this year. We should, I'll expand on it after we get through these awards here.
We'll get to it when we talk about a certain trailer.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Best Action Game, and the winner was Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon from Software Bandai Namco.
I can't argue with that.
I haven't played it. Yeah. My friends used to really love the Armored Core games. I remember them playing those like constantly, and I just never got into them.
I haven't really played one, so I don't know. I don't have anything to say, really.
I just remember one of my friends, he's black, and he named his mech the White Nightmare.
That's funny.
And that was in a past Armored Core game. That was like Armored Core 1 or 2. It was like way back.
Right.
Yeah, Armored Core. That was the first like major hit game from Software, I believe.
Yeah, it was the first one that that hit big, I think.
Way before Dark Souls and Demon Souls.
Yeah. It was like their second game series after they made Kingsfield.
Yep. Next we have Best Independent Game, and the winner is Sea of Stars from Sabotage Studio.
I mean, yeah, I'll accept that. I haven't played it yet, but the game looks fantastic.
Yeah, same here. Haven't played it, but it's being constantly compared to like Chrono Trigger is, always
Chrono Trigger with like a
sign.
Mario RPG style battle system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Best Ongoing Game. We were debating whether we should keep this award or not on there because it's not really an interesting category, but the winner is more interesting because the winner is Cyberpunk 2077. As I've mentioned on this podcast before, I love Cyberpunk 2077. I played it on Stadia when all the console versions were just crapping themselves. The Stadia, which was the laughing stock of the gaming industry, was surprisingly holding up with that game. And I absolutely love Cyberpunk. It was a very flawed, technically flawed game, but it was such a great presentation of like this open world city and such a great story. I adored it. It had so many issues though at launch, and this is kind of the cap of its redemption story.
Oh, yeah.
It launched, it just got its last big update, it had its DLC that got pretty critically loved as well. And it's, but that's Cyberpunk 2077. It's kind of, we're through that now. I think the only updates that are coming to the game from this point on are just tech updates. Like they're adding in whatever the AMD version of frame generation is. They're like adding that to the game. They're doing some other stuff. They're just these like small tech upgrades basically, rather than like, content updates that they've been doing like tons of since the game came out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I gotta commend them because, it's unfortunate the state the game launched in, and the criticisms were justified, but you gotta give them all credit in the world for, just sticking with it and taking the great strides they did to continually add on and update the game to make it the game that it is today.
Yes. Next up, we have Best Performance, and the winner is Neil Newbon as Asterion in Baldur's Gate 3.
Haven't
played Baldur's Gate 3.
You've probably seen, if you've been around the internet or something, I've seen, videos and memes of Asterion and stuff, and I gotta say, he's fantastic. It's clear he's the fan favorite standout of the game, and
I'm surprised that you're not wholeheartedly throwing your support for Best Performance behind Little Flower Guys from Super Mario Bros. Wonder. year.
Ooh, oh my word, yes, please. I don't think they were nominated. I actually forget who was all nominated for best performance.
As I mentioned, haven't played Baldur's Gate 3. I'm still early in Phantom Liberty, and that's as far as good performances go. That's kind of my only real experience with great voice performances in a game this year has been Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. But I haven't gotten far enough to really make any kind of judgment about, is Idris Elba killing it? Is Keanu Reeves really bringing it? I can't really say.
Yeah, the other nominees for category were Ben Starr for Final Fantasy 16, Cameron Monaghan for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Idris Elba for Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty, Melanie LeBird, I hope I'm saying that right, for Alan Wake 2, and Yuri Lowenthal for Marvel Spider-Man 2. Those were the other nominees.
Yeah, I said, my only real experience with anything in that category is Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, and I just haven't played enough to really form a really strong opinion in that direction.
Yeah.
Next we have Best Score and Music, and the winner is Final Fantasy 16, as composed by Masayoshi Soken.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually a category Baldur's Gate 3 was nominated for and lost. So
it's hard to beat a Final Fantasy game in music. I mean, there are games that are up there, but it's not common that you're going to get a game that has as much focus on the quality of the music as Final Fantasy.
Yeah, Final Fantasy music is legendary,
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I'd argue any year, a Xenoblade game is up or something. Those have fantastic scores as well, Or a lot of the other old, composers that used to work at Square and stuff that have gone on and, Matsuda, who's done a bunch of other, great stuff. But yeah, I mean, none of those were really around. So Final Fantasy 16, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the next 3 awards, I'm going to say these a little bit differently, all went to the same game. So I'm going to say the next 3 awards that were won by Alan Wake 2 from Remedy and Epic are Best Art Direction, Best Narrative, and Best Game Direction.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the narrative of Alan Wake 2 is really good.
I heard it's weird,
it's really and meta,
and crosses over a bunch of their old games and stuff.
Yeah,
even games that they don't have the rights to anymore that they still made reference to.
Interesting.
So Alan Wake 2 getting a fair number of awards there. And then that leaves only the big one, Game of the Year. And this, I knew it was obvious just by the kind of the style of hype that the game was getting. And that is Baldur's Gate 3.
It's the only game that had this year had Metacritic equal to Zelda.
Yeah.
So it's kind of yeah.
Yeah. I mean, here's what I'll say. And I think I've mentioned this to you before, and I'll say it in the clearest, best way I can, is that I don't adore Tears of the Kingdom. It's probably the best game I've played this year, but it's Breath of the Wild is my favorite game of all time. Tears of the Kingdom did not supplant it. It didn't replace it, for me. I don't think Tears of the Kingdom is as good as Breath of the Wild. I think it's technically doing a lot of crazy shit that Breath of the Wild couldn't even dream of. But it's just as a directed experience, it's just not as good in my opinion. But the second Baldur's Gate 3 came out and started getting all this mass hype, I'm almost every video game site, award show, anything like that at all having to do with video games is going to jump at the opportunity to give it to something that got hype at the same scale as Zelda rather than give it to Zelda. It sounds like I'm being a conspiracy theorist when I'm saying that. I don't think it's a concerted effort. I just think that there's a lot of fucking people in the industry that just do not want to give shit to Nintendo. They don't want to give credit where it's due to Nintendo. And sometimes they can't resist that, and sometimes they do.
I don't think that's true at all, but
I don't think it's an intentional thing. I think it's almost subconscious. It's
I think it's a more simple I think the more simple answer is there's new stuff being done in Tears of the Kingdom, but in a lot of ways, it's a lot more of the same as what we got with Breath of the Wild. So there's not as much of the wow or newness factor with Tears of the Kingdom that we got with Breath of the Wild.
But you could say, I mean,
but with Baldur's Gate 3 it's
added a lot more options and where you can actually see the dice being rolled. That's their contributions. I'd argue that Ultra Hand Ascend and the rewind feature of Tears Tears of the
really
Kingdom are game changing.
I think you're being really reductive, especially since this is the first time the mainstream gaming media has even, like, seriously considered a game like Baldur's Gate 3. Larian Studios' previous games are arguably just as good, but never got mainstream attention or notoriety.
I'm not shitting on Baldur's Gate 3 or the people that made it and the work they put in and them getting the credit. It's not that at all. I'm shitting on the people that hand out these awards in the game industry. That's who I'm shitting on. Like, I don't think it's necessarily bad that Baldur's Gate 3 won. It's just the second that it was getting hype that was even close to what Zelda was getting, I knew that this was going to be the result. It's like, it's not because it doesn't deserve it. Like, I'm not even saying Baldur's Gate 3 doesn't deserve it. I'm just saying, like, I knew that this was going to be the result because it happens every time there's a game that even slightly competes with whatever Nintendo put out that year. The Nintendo game is gone, even if that Nintendo game is way better, which I'm not even saying it is. This time I haven't even played Baldur's Gate. But, like, it's just a trend, and I picked up on it, and I knew it immediately without any question, without any second thought in my mind. I knew that this was going to happen. And it's like a frustrating thing, and it has nothing to do with Larian Studios. I think I'm happy for them, you know? And like I said, I don't even care that much about Tears of the Kingdom as a whole. Like, it's not like if Breath of the Wild had that pulled on them, I would have been upset because that became my favorite game of all time and Tears of the Kingdom did not. But it's just like, I think it, and like I said, I don't think it's even intentional. I think it's just so many people just still have this like, oh, are we seriously considering a Nintendo game? And then I think sometimes the Nintendo game is so huge and so important that you can't fight it. Like, it's ridiculous to even try. And sometimes, like, it's like, oh, another game came out that can compete. That's it. That's the best game ever. I think that's the way it is.
But then you have people who will argue to you that the media is biased towards Nintendo. And
I'd argue
Nintendo games always get the highest scores because of bias.
I think that's entirely bullshit. I think there's a small niche within the gaming industry that is biased towards Nintendo. I think because Nintendo's such an interesting company, they inspire that there is that aspect to it. But I think, like, the major outlets, like the Game Awards, for example, have never been all that friendly to Nintendo. Like, ever.
I think they've definitely been friendly to Nintendo, especially, like, Jeff Keighley had, like, a great relationship with Reggie when Reggie was running Nintendo America. That's how they got, like, a bunch of exclusives at a time that they don't get now.
I'm talking about the awards. I'm not talking about the reveals and stuff. I'm talking about the awards. Nintendo almost never even is considered for a lot of the categories that they should be.
I think it's
I'm
fair.
alone in there, but
I don't know.
I don't think that happens.
Nintendo had two, if you look at Game of the Year, Nintendo had 2 games nominated for Game of the Year this year. More games than any other publisher.
One of which is considered to be one of the best games of all time in Tears of the Kingdom, and the other game is considered to be the best 2D Mario since the SNES.
Yeah, well, obviously, gotta be
so
the
that's
best
not not being kind to Nintendo. That's Nintendo earning that.
You gotta earn it. Obviously, yes, yeah, you gotta earn it. Nintendo earns it, in my opinion. I'm gonna be honest. I was like at Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I kind of low-key want that to win, just because, like, I kind of wish that we lived in a world where a very high quality, very polished, innovative 2D platformer can be Game of the Year.
Yeah, we knew that wasn't going to happen.
No, I knew. We don't live in that world anymore. That world died with the 90s.
Everybody probably thinks I'm crazy, but like I said, I'm not saying it's some conspiracy. I'm just saying it's like a subconscious resistance. I think that a lot of people have. I think this started mostly in, like, the Wii era. I think a lot of people just kind of wrote off Nintendo when they got out of the Power game, and they just kind of. I think I think that still exists, and it's like the new version of the kitty bias thing, you know, like how people would label Nintendo as being kitty.
I think you actually, like, touched on something there. I think there is a slight bias to Nintendo just because their hardware isn't state of the art. Their games aren't, like, from a tech perspective, state of the art. They're not pushing graphics and the gee whiz factor.
But even when they did, then they had the kitty bias. So they always had some kind of bias used against them.
With the GameCube, it was like, this is for children. I remember, like, so many, like, developers at the time, like, I'm reading IGN or reading EGM interviews, you know, with developers who were, like, making games who didn't have, like, an announced GameCube version, and asked, are you going to develop for a GameCube? GameCube, and they're like, well, that's more for children. We're making games for adults.
Yeah, there's an industry bias, like I said. And again, like I said, just to clarify, and this will be the last of it, I am not saying anything against Baldur's Gate 3. If this wasn't the case, if this kind of industry bias wasn't something that I was so frustrated with, that I would see all the time and that's etched into my brain as like a point of frustration, if that wasn't the case, I would probably have preferred them to win over Tears of the Kingdom, because it's a studio that didn't really get love before. Because I like the idea of that, and because Tears of the Kingdom wasn't Breath of the Wild for me. It wasn't as good as Breath of the Wild, so it wasn't, something that I would stand up to defend. I would be like cheering on the little guy.
Right.
The only reason I'm a little upset with this is because that industry bias exists. And I was like, I knew this was going to happen. Like, I knew it before it did, just because I've experienced it so fucking much that it's become like a sour point for me. It's become like a point of frustration. And it's not even something that I want to, not a hill I want to die on or something, but it's just, I just think that there is this weird industry bias, and it's kind of like half nonsensical, and it exists very clearly in my opinion. And it's just weird, and it annoys me.
Yeah.
But that's my little Nintendo fanboy rant, I guess. So, moving on from the winners of the Game Awards, the real purpose of the Game Awards, as everybody knows, is new trailers.
It's marketing and advertisement. And this Game Awards, there's been some controversy. This has not been without controversy, but this Game Awards made it, I think, clearer than before that the primary focus is for marketing. The awards are definitely secondary now.
Mm-hmm. People tune in for the game reveals. That's why people tune into the Game Awards.
Yep, and then they got like the ad breaks and everything. Which, yeah, as far as like the game reveals go, the trailers, this was like one of the best years in a long time. Because they showed like some real interesting stuff.
Not so much for me, but I have very specific tastes. But like, I recognize that there were a lot of like really big things shown. And a few like kind of interesting surprises too.
One of the things
it just didn't appeal to my exact taste, most of it.
One of the things they showed, which I thought like was big, and obviously Jeff Keighley thought was big, because they devoted so much time to it that I did not personally find interesting in the slightest, was Hideo Kojima's new game, OD, which they devoted to like 10 minutes talking about this game, which they did not say anything about. There was only a few tidbits of it. They showed this trailer, which was like a nothing trailer. They just announced like
cryptic dialogue and faces.
Yeah, faces. For actors' faces. They announced 3 actors were going to be in this. Hunter Schafer from Euphoria.
I'm surprised about Hunter Schafer. I'm surprised I haven't seen all this, like, Kojima's gone woke.
Oh, yeah.
For those who don't know, Hunter Schafer is trans.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of blown away that there wasn't a big, like, woke controversy about OD.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised by that. Like, well, I mean, I'm pleasantly surprised that there hasn't, like, been that kind of backlash.
It'll come later when they put, like, a real trailer out and you see more of Hunter. Then they're gonna be like, that's when all the homophobia and shit is gonna come out.
Sophia Lilith, I think that's her name.
Mm-hmm.
She was most recently in the new Dungeons & Dragons movie, which is where I saw her from. She was also in the show I Am Not Okay With This. She was the lead in that show.
You did not like that show. I like that one. You did not.
It did not resonate with me. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine. But she's also, apparently, I was looking up, apparently she was in It in 2017. I did not watch that.
Yes.
And also It Chapter 2. But yeah, she's in this, and then the last guy, Oder Care? Jesus.
It's the guy from the Make Me Bad Corn music video.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'll reduce him to, is a Corn music video.
No, I've seen that guy in like a lot
He's
of
a character actor.
Udo Kier. Kier. Yeah, okay.
He's a great character actor. You've seen him in a ton of things.
But it was like, just like their faces, obvious, like their mocap faces, repeating some kind of like cryptic rhyme. Getting like, increasingly more desperate, and then Sophia Lilith like screams.
Yeah, but you see a reflection of a door opening in her eye, and then she screams.
Yeah, and then she screams. Like, can I reveal that was the trailer? That was it.
And then we had 5 minutes of Kojima talking in Japanese, and then 5 minutes of that being translated.
Yeah, we had a whole minutes. Like, it was mostly to announce that Jordan Peele was also going to be involved in this game. So it's a horror game.
And there's apparently other directors and stuff too.
Apparently there's going to be other directors involved. So it's a horror game. It at least involves those 3 actors. characters. At least involves Jordan Peele.
It's supposed to be cross-medium, they said, so not necessarily horror game as like horror experience or horror franchise. I don't know.
It's gonna be like, it's gonna be cloud-based. It's gonna utilize Microsoft's Azure cloud technology. That's it. That's all we know. And it was the longest segment in the entire show.
Of course, because it's Kojima and Jeff Keighley can't get his lips off of his ass.
Yeah, to barely give us any information about a game that they really didn't have a, like, real new information to share.
Let's talk about another game.
Crazy.
Let's talk about a game that came out of fucking nowhere, is absolutely stunning and gorgeous and totally nostalgic. Visions of Mana.
Oh my god, Visions, yeah. I saw that and I was like, man, that looked fantastic. That looked like, I don't know how to say it, but it looked like it had like the soul of the Super Nintendo games.
Yeah, just beautiful bright colors and
yeah, exactly. I saw that, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for that.
Yeah, I wasn't too fond of the Trials of Mana remake that they did that has like a similar visual style, just because I think that was kind of like a weird half step. Like they remade it, but they kept so much the same that like it just had these weird animations and stuff that felt like jerky and
cheap.
Disjointed. Yeah.
I mean, it looked cheap. It looked like it was clearly made on a budget.
Yeah, I mean the character models look good and stuff, but the animation was pretty like meh. And it kind of felt like one of those weird half steps where like a game is like remastered and made to look absolutely stunning, but then they didn't change the animation or something. You know, it's like that. It's like obviously this was a complete remake. It wasn't a remaster thing because it was a sprite-based game turned into a 3D game. But it just felt like they just said like, oh, we just had the sprite like flipping over and over here, so we're just going to do the same thing with the 3D model here. You know, like it just felt like that kind of like weird, cheap kind of quality that's kind of like halfway between like a full-on remake and like the kind of like remakes we get more often, which aren't as full-on, I guess, if that makes any sense. But Visions of Mana is a different story. Visions of Mana just looks like a full-on, complete, ground-up, fresh-made, gorgeous game that takes great inspiration from its predecessors.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Looks fantastic. Hype for that.
Then we got a trailer for a game that I'm super psyched for because this was one of my favorite Wii games, oddly enough, even though it was a WiiWare game. And I think it is pretty much universally considered the best WiiWare game. And that is World of Goo. We're getting a sequel, World of Goo 2. And I'm super psyched for this. Not only did I love World of Goo, the first game I finished on the Wii U was Little Inferno, which was from the same guys that did World of Goo. I fucking loved the presentation. I love like the Tim Burton-esque aesthetic of that, of the games that they've made. And World of Goo was just phenomenal. Great music, great look, great design, great humor, great writing. And then just like a really solid puzzle game underneath all of that as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I'm really excited for World of Goo too. This is probably the most exciting game for me, as odd as that sounds. Like most people would probably go, what are you talking about? What about this game or that game? It's like a lot of the big games that were revealed that like looked amazing and stuff like that, they're just not really my cup of tea. World of Goo was like a game I absolutely adored. So World of Goo 2 is like a surprise that came out of nowhere for me.
Oh yeah, World of Goo was fantastic. Happy to see a sequel after all this time. Honestly, that was a big surprise for me. I didn't think that series was ever coming back.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that was exciting. We got a new trailer for Metaphor ReFantazio. This is the fantasy RPG from the creators of the Persona games. This is the Persona team's new fantasy RPG, but it's got so much Persona style. It just is in a fantasy setting instead of a contemporary setting. I don't think there's too much more to add about that. It just continues to look fantastic. Continues to look very Persona.
You could tell like this is their new premiere game. They're throwing all like their money in development on. It looks stunning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't wait for that.
Nobody does like an interface like the Persona team.
No. I also I love the art style. The Atlas team does. Always love their art style. So like this looks fantastic.
Next up, we got the trailer that I think is probably the most beloved from the Game Awards. I think it was the last trailer they showed.
Yeah, they saved it for
like
the last. Yeah.
The big crowning one. It was Monster Hunter Wilds. I never got into the Monster Hunter games. A lot of people did at different points, you know. It's just not my kind of game. But you and I both know a lot of people that are huge into Monster Hunter, that this was like a big deal for. And this game, I heard a lot of people talk about like, it's appropriately named Monster Hunter Wilds because it's like Monster Hunter, but with like Breath of the Wild aspects, you know?
Right, yeah. I think this is going to be like the first open world Monster Hunter game.
Yeah, like Monster Hunter World and what was the Rise? Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch and stuff were leaning in that direction, but they weren't quite there yet. And
no,
Monster
they were
Hunter
still
Wilds
like they were still like segmented, you know, like with Monster Hunter Rise you had like the town, which was like the hub world, and then you took missions from the board, which you accept a mission and you go into the this area, which was a pretty large open world area, but it was self-contained, and all the areas were self-contained, separated off of each other. You know, so there was no I think this is going to be like, you know, this is going to be like all the areas are going to be accessible in a vast world.
And it also looks like they're really putting a focus, like we mentioned it being kind of like Breath of the Wild aspects, but rather than like playing a lot with, you know, abilities that allow you to, you know, do interesting things with a chemistry system, it seems like they're doing a lot more with AI interactions between different monsters that happen to be in the same plane.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That seems to be kind of focused, which is not
really
going to
be
you get much of in Breath of the Wild. So it's kind of weird that, you know, it's an obvious connection between Breath of the Wild and Monster Hunter Wilds. There's like an obvious kind of inspiration there, but it's weird that even saying that, like the way they're approaching it is completely different. Like where instead of like systems, like chemistry systems and stuff, with the way items interact with your abilities and stuff, it's all about like monster AI interactions.
Yeah. Low key, and this is my prediction and speculation, this was announced only for PS5 and Xbox Series consoles and PC, I think. I could be wrong about PC, but it's only announced for current gen, but low-key, I think this is like one of the first Switch 2 games that we're seeing. I heavily expect this to end up on Nintendo's next console. It's just...
That would be interesting.
Capcom can't announce a game for a console that's not announced, so...
They
would be
could,
interesting.
or they could do what they did this generation, which is that they made Monster Hunter World. That was for the other systems. And then they made Monster Hunter Rise using a lot of what they learned of Monster Hunter World and then kind of scaled it a little bit down for the Switch. Yeah. We know the Switch successor, it's gonna be powerful, but it's not gonna be on the scale of a PS5 or...
No, it's not.
Xbox Series X. Yeah. So if they don't do Monster Hunter Wilds on Switch 2, they'll probably still do something like it for the Switch 2.
Yeah. And then we got
your favorite trailer.
I had to pinch myself to make sure I didn't fall asleep. And I imagined all this in a fever dream because holy cow, was I not expecting this.
They got to choose what are we going to do for our big Game Awards reveal? What game are we going to focus on?
Yeah.
And then they said game. Why not make it plural?
Well, yeah. But also for Sega to actually remember they had IPs. Like crazy. Yeah. It's they announced a new Jet Set Radio, a new Shinobi, a new Golden Axe, a new Streets of Rage, and a new Crazy Taxi. Like, what?
So are these all brand new entries, or
these
some
are
of
all
them
brand
are
new games?
So none of them are like remakes, or
no.
Okay.
And I caught on to that because the first thing it showed was Jet Grind Radio, and I was kind of confused. I was like, wait, are they showing? Is this no? This is new. This is new. What's happening? And yeah, they showed Shinobi is a new game. That's a 2D game. It got a hand-drawn art style. Looks absolutely gorgeous. Shinobi is one of my favorite old school Sega franchises. To see that come back and look so amazing is great. Golden Axe looked good. Still too early. The last attempt they did to revive Golden Axe Beast Rider was a disaster. That game sucked. Sucked so bad. But the snippet gameplay looked promising. So did Streets of Rage and a new Crazy Taxi. I was like, wow.
Looks like Crazy Taxi's up in the crazy too, which is interesting.
This is like Dreamcast era Sega coming back.
Yeah. Well, it's not just the games they showed, because they made it explicit in the trailer that this is just the beginning.
Yeah. This is just the beginning. More franchises can come back. We can possibly get a new Virtua Fighter.
This is like a coming out party for Sega.
Yeah, exactly.
More than about these specific 5 games, it was more like them coming out and saying, this is our new direction.
Yes. After the Game Awards, the CEO of Sega commented, they had an interview, and he basically said, this was possible because of the success of, their 3 pillar franchises, which...
Be what? Like a Dragon?
Yes, the 3 pillars are Sonic the Hedgehog, Like a Dragon, and Persona. He said the success of those 3 franchises allowed them to be able to have the financial stability to do stuff like bring these old franchises back.
It's weird. I still don't even think of Persona as Sega because, it's Atlas, obviously, but... Atlas is owned by Sega, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I still have a weird mental disconnect there, though.
Yeah, same.
Like, I was trying to think, like, you were talking about the 3 pillars, and I hadn't heard that before, and I'm like, well, it's gotta be Like a Dragon, which is formerly known as Yakuza. It's gotta be Sonic the Hedgehog. And I'm like, what else is it? Like, would it be Virtua Fighter? Like, what's their other pillar, you know? And you say Persona, it's like, oh, well, yeah, obviously. That just never popped into my head.
Yeah. Right. It is funny thinking of Persona as like a Sega franchise because, you know, the Persona games were always like exclusive to PlayStation consoles. Even like when Sega was competing with Sony, you know, like Persona never appeared on the Sega Saturn.
Yeah.
It was on the PS1.
I don't think any of the Mega 10 games, which Persona is a spin-off of Mega 10, and I don't even think any of the Mega 10 games made it to a Sega system.
Oh, maybe not. I don't know.
I think those were all like, I think they went from SNES to PlayStation.
Yeah, that was like the clear evolution. So yeah, Sega owning Atlas now is a little strange.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's fantastic. This is what I've wanted. Yeah, like I said, I would love to see more. I'd love to see a new Virtual Fighter. I'd love to see a new Panzer Dragoon.
You know what I want to see, and nobody wants to see it because the original game was terrible, but I think the idea is good, and like if they completely like reinvented it, just going back to the idea, it would be like a really cool game. Altered Beast.
Oh, yeah, you know what? It would be really cool because like
I love the idea of people turning into monsters. It's like, yeah, I love that.
The creature transfer, you could do a real fantastic game with that. Yeah, the original game is not one of my favorite games. I think
it's just like not a great game, period.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's too slow. It's too clunky. It really has its flaws. Some people love it. I don't know why, but the concept is sound. Like you can do a lot with that concept. And yeah.
You do it right. You can do a lot with it. The only problem is that when you look at like nostalgic games and you try to draw back upon the original and what people liked about the original, like I really wouldn't want them to do that.
No,
just strip it down to the core concept and go completely different.
If you were going to do like a 2D like beat 'em up like the original wanted to be, it would have to be like much faster paced with more fluid controls, a better fighting system. You know, like you would have to revamp it.
I wouldn't even do that. I'd just go for a full 3D action adventure game or something. Just the only thing remaining is the core concept of turning into monsters.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That is it for our Game Awards coverage though. And the last thing we're going to go over is some trailers that hit in the last 2 weeks. Like some of these we were going to cover, you know, in the podcast that we ended up canceling, and now we'll cover them here. And some of them are brand new trailers, but quite a few came out in that time. We had a pretty massive list and we cut it down as much as we could. And we're going to start things off with a new trailer for a movie from Jake Johnson from New Girl. And he played Nick in New Girl, and he also plays Peter Parker in the Spider-Verse movies. And he has a movie that he's directing and starring in called Self-Reliance. And this trailer starts off, it's awesome because he's just kind of walking down the street and a car pulls up next to him and the window rolls down and it's Andy Samberg. And you're like, oh, Andy Samberg's in this too. And it's like, no, he's playing himself. Andy Samberg is playing himself, and Jake Johnson's character recognizes him as Andy Samberg and brings it up. And he's like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm Andy Samberg. And then it's like, where is this going? Is this just going to be some weird comedy that's going to be a little bit meta or something? No, this is the most dangerous game.
Yeah, this is a comedy take on the most dangerous game. Like they're definitely not playing it straight in any way. This is weird and fucked up, but in like the most wonderful way. Like I was like really surprised by this. Like you said, like when the trailer started, I didn't know what to expect. But then when it got to the end of it, I was like 100% sold on this movie. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah, cool concept, nice way to execute it. It's like I love kind of deconstructions or plays on kind of like tropes and stuff. And the most dangerous game has become a trope, and the idea of like kind of deconstructing that into a different genre of comedy. It's like really cool.
The twist that makes this work and really injects a lot of the comedy into it was the rule where like he can only be killed if he's alone. And so he has to like constantly have somebody by his side to the point like where he just like hires some random hobo off the street. It's great. It's great.
Yeah. It's just this, and it looks like there's so much movement in that area too, where he's going to be that it's not going to be a buddy comedy with him and a homeless guy through the whole thing. That's like just a part of it.
It looks like it's part of it. It looks like Anna Kendrick is like the person like he ends up spending like the most time with.
Yeah. Yeah.
From the trailer.
But it looks like there's a lot of movement. Like, it looks like he has different partners
I
at
don't
different
think
times.
I don't think the hobo guy is in the movie for that long. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna say that's like a joke that they do and they get past. Yeah.
But yeah, that looks fantastic. The next movie we got is another original, like, non-franchise movie. Although it has a pretty franchisey name, which is Civil War. This is the next movie from Alex Garland.
Yeah.
No, this is the next movie from Alex Garland, who did Ex Machina and recently did the Devs series on Hulu. And yeah, this is basically almost a too close to home kind of story. Like, what would happen if the U.S. went into a new civil war, a modern civil war?
Yeah. What if a modern civil war
that feels
happened?
like we're really close to something like that.
I don't feel that. I feel like we're living in a period where, like, we are politically polarized. I don't think we're anywhere close to a civil war. I think the scenario laid out in here, it's a fun fantasy scenario. I mean, it's not, like, fun to think about, like, actually happening, but as far as, like, a movie goes, as far as, like, an action suspense thriller movie goes, it's a fine premise. It's just, like, I think it's, like, absurd. Like, nothing like this is, like, ever going to happen. But yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, some of the stuff is pretty chilling with when you consider what's going on. Like, they had Jesse Plemons is in it, and there was a part where he was holding a gun on the people, and they said, "You don't understand, we're Americans." And he said, "What kind of Americans?" Yeah. And it's like that kind of thing, the idea of, like, that kind of division and stuff,
Jesse
and where that could lead
is,
is...
reprising his role as Todd from Breaking Bad, obviously.
Looking great, by the way. He lost a lot of weight.
Oh, yeah, he looks fantastic.
But yeah,
Kirsten Dunst is a reporter, which, Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons are a couple, so if you didn't know that.
Yeah, they're married. But yeah, I don't know, Civil War looks really good. It's Alex Garland. Everything he does is pretty
but yeah,
important.
I was watching the trailer, I was like, where is Iron Man? Where's Captain America? I don't know if I can be on board. Missing some important parts.
You talk about Marvel, let's get into the franchise trailers that we did get.
Okay.
So we got a trailer for Furiosa. This is the prequel, kind of, to the most recent Mad Max movie that everybody just completely fell in fucking love with, Fury Road. People just absolutely adored that movie, and they're focusing on Charlize Theron's character, played here younger by Anna Taylor-Joy.
Yeah.
And how about Chris Hemsworth in this?
Yeah.
Did that throw you? I saw him on screen and didn't even call it was him.
Yeah, no, they did a great job. Really, like, obscuring it, so, like, you're not, like, immediately, like, that's Chris Hemsworth.
It's like, why is Thor in the desert? You know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, do I have to say anything? It looks fantastic. It looks amazing. Just like Fury Road. I think this is going to be, like, as good or even better than Fury Road.
Yeah. Next, we got a trailer for Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire. So, a lot of Godzilla stuff just in the recent stretch of time. Like, in theaters right now is Godzilla -1, which is getting a ton of praise. It's a Godzilla movie from Japan about a post-World War II Godzilla movie. It's like, basically, after World War II, shit's going down, and Godzilla shows up.
By the way, like, in Godzilla -1, Godzilla is purely the villain in this movie. Like, we're not getting, like, good guy Godzilla.
Yeah.
There's no other monster.
No Godzilla thumbs up moment.
There's no other monster in Godzilla -1, as far as I know, that, like, Godzilla starts fighting. Like, it's just Godzilla, versus post-war Japan.
Yeah. So,
this is obviously a very different Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
To -1. This is
different, yeah.
This is the one where, like, Godzilla does fight a bunch of big monsters.
Yeah. With Kong. Godzilla and Kong together.
Like Kong, they're like, they're partners now.
Yeah.
It looks awesome. I'm gonna watch it for sure. I'm a sucker for this stuff. I love watching big kaiju monsters beat the crap out of each other.
I haven't watched any of this franchise version of the Godzilla movies since the first one.
Oh, okay.
So, like, I'm not talking about Godzilla as a whole. I'm talking about, like, they did that one with, like, Bryan Cranston, and that one was the one I saw, and I haven't seen any of the ones since. Like, I didn't see the ones with Millie Bobby Brown, or I didn't see Kong Skull Island, so I need to catch up on those if I am to watch this. And there's a show on Apple right now too, Monarch, which is also that franchise.
Set in this world, yeah. And also, like, the director of the recent Godzilla movies, I think Godzilla x Kong, Gareth Edwards was the director of the 2014 Godzilla movie. he recently came out and said, Godzilla Minus One is a candidate for best movie of all time and is what a Godzilla movie should be.
That's kind of what I've been hearing. I've been hearing, like, big Godzilla fans are going crazy over Godzilla Minus One, so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So
and
definitely,
it's widely in theaters
between this and, Godzilla X Kong and Monarch on Apple Plus, like, if you're a Godzilla fan, you're eating right now. You're feasting.
Yep. Next up, continuing the franchise love, we got a new trailer for Dune Part 2. Didn't get a lot of new stuff in this trailer, just a lot of really cool scenes.
Yeah, a lot of really cool scenes. It's more Doom. It's more Dune. Like, gonna be great.
Yep. Dune was fantastic. I kind of want to see this next one in IMAX, so.
Nice. Yeah, definitely watch it in IMAX.
Then we move on to...
I'm gonna watch it as a Game Boy Advance video file. The way it was intended.
Yeah. Then we move on to the TV shows. And first up, we have an adaptation of Fallout for Amazon from the creators of Westworld.
Yep. Walton Goggins.
Yep.
Walton Goggins is fantastic. He plays a ghoul in this one.
It's funny, I've heard so many people that are very hesitant on this because of the way Westworld turned out. And I think people have like a short memory because Westworld, I think, lost both of us at a certain point.
Yeah, it did.
But season 1 of Westworld is fantastic television still.
Yes,
and I want to firmly state my position that, like, just because a show loses its way, like in a later season, doesn't negate the quality of previous seasons.
No, it doesn't.
Game of Thrones season 8, not great. That does not negate what Game of Thrones accomplished in its earlier seasons.
Yeah, it doesn't, like, make the entire series garbage all of a sudden.
First season of Westworld is absolutely fantastic.
No, and I think, like, this looked great. One of the best things I could say about this trailer is it looked like Fallout. It didn't look like something calling itself Fallout. It looked like authentically Fallout.
Yeah, it had that tone. It had that, like, 1950s aesthetic and, like, weird post-apocalyptic mutant humor.
Yes.
You know, it's like all that kind of stuff, like, it was there. So it looks like it's going to be good. And
it really
Walton Goggins is, as you mentioned, Walton Goggins is in it, and that's a big get.
Yeah, and he's clearly one of the main characters. He plays a ghoul, but they did show, like, there was a brief shot where they showed, like, Walton Goggins normal, which suggests, like, they're going to go into, like, his backstory, or, like, flashbacks to, like, before the war. And one of the funny things is, like, this was also, like, at the Game Awards, but they didn't show any new footage. It was all, like, cuts that were from this trailer.
They should have just held this off for the Game Awards.
Yeah, they should have. It was so weird, I thought, because, like, they made a big deal out of it. They had Walton Goggins, like, and like, other members of the cast, like, presenting with, like, a guy in, like, a big, power armor, like, suit, Brotherhood of Steel guy. And then they showed it, and it was like one, like, small clip of Walton Goggins, introducing in black and white that wasn't in the trailer. Then the rest of the scenes were all cut from this trailer. And I was like, what was the point of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. But Fallout trailer looks great. Then we got a trailer for The Boys. The new season of The Boys.
Season
looks
4 is
fantastic.
coming.
Homelander is terrifying as usual. And it looks like a lot of fun, gory, gross out, action-packed moments. It looks like a Boys trailer. Boys trailers kind of have a format like that. Like, they start off with, like, an intimidating shot, and then they just show, like, a whole bunch of gore shots.
Yeah. They're set up like roller coasters, you know? Like,
yeah. So I'm excited for more of The Boys. Boys, I'm always kind of mixed on because I love The Boys, but at the same time, it's like sometimes it feels like the premise is starting to wear a bit thin.
It just feels like, I don't know, like I felt like recently, especially with like last season, like they're spinning their wheels. Like they're afraid to like do anything like that would like shake things up. Mm-hmm. It really felt like nothing progressed last season story-wise.
Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff in the season. There's cool storytelling and stuff, but like if you look at the core characters, the core dynamics of the characters, like nothing's really happening.
Yeah, exactly. And so I hope something happens this season that kind of like shakes things up.
Well, we know that, for example, in Gen V was supposed to be a big setup for the next season of The Boys, and likewise, this next season of The Boys is supposed to be a big setup for the next season of Gen V. So they're tying them together in an interesting way. And I had mentioned this when we talked about Gen V, that like I actually preferred Gen V key to like the most recent season of The Boys, like in some ways, just because it was like a little bit more fresh. Like there's some new stuff. There's more like risk. There's more like, uncertainty about what's going to happen than there is in The Boys in the most recent season. But like, yeah, it's hopefully that kind of dynamic, like maybe helps them shake things up a little bit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Then we got a trailer for season 2 of House of the Dragon. House of the Dragon was pretty good. It was a good return to form after season 8 of Game of Thrones. It ended. I just saw somebody talking about how like they thought that the ending wasn't that great. I thought the ending to House of the Dragon was phenomenal. I thought the scene with God, I can't even think of the character's name now. Like, when she finds out what happened to her son, and she turns around and you can just see the fury and, like, what that means.
Oh, yeah.
I thought was, like, a phenomenal scene, so.
George R. Martin saw, like, the first 2 episodes. He said, they're really heavy. So.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
So they are dark.
It's gonna be an awesome show, and that's coming back next year. And we got to see some trailers. I got to see some awesome shots of some dragons. There's a really cool shot on a beach where it's got, like, the 2 dragons on far opposite sides from each other and like a delegation of people meeting between them. It's just like a really cool shot. And then you get that awesome shot of that one really old dragon that the guy with the eye patch rides.
Yeah.
Like flying with its torn up wings and stuff. It's just, yeah, it looks cool, looks like more House of the Dragon.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then lastly, we got a trailer for Grand Theft Auto 6, a little indie game that nobody really knows much about from a franchise that no one's heard of before.
It was very much like they went all in on the Florida memes. So
yeah.
This is set in like, the GTA universe version of Florida, which I forgot the name of the state. It's more than Vice City. So they said like, if you read the description on the website, they mentioned it by like, welcome to like the state or whatever. And they said it's home to Vice City.
Mm-hmm. Vice City being like a parallel to Miami.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And since like it was like a very much Florida meme centric trailer, I think like they're expanding the scope and that this is going to like, you're obviously going back to Vice City. Yeah, it's called Leonida in GTA. It says, yeah, GTA 6 heads to the state of Leonida, home to the neon-soaked streets of Vice City and beyond in the biggest and most immersive evolution of Grand Theft Auto series yet, is what it says on their website.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sounds like you will go back to Vice City, but you will also be going to other areas and locales within in that state. So the scope is expanded in this game.
Yeah, and it's got kind of a Bonnie and Clyde story going on, it seems.
Yes.
There's a male and female character in a relationship and they're getting in trouble and doing things. And, that seems to be kind of the focus. They're kind of doing that dual protagonist thing, like, GTA 5 had like the 3 protagonists, so they're kind of playing with that. I wonder, they're mostly going to be together, I think, in the story, but I wonder if they're going to play around with that a bit too, because that was one of the big points of GTA 5 was you could switch between characters and like you'd suddenly like pop into another character and they'd just be like, oh, what are they up to? They're like in the middle of doing something and you just pop into their life and end up controlling them. And it was like a big part of the appeal of that. So I'm kind of wondering if they're going to play around a little bit with that here as well, even though these characters seem like they're mostly together.
Yeah, they probably will.
Lots of Florida man aesthetics, crocodiles going into shops, guys with mullets, girls twerking. Very, very Florida Beach stuff. Fantastic graphics, just the attention to detail. It's one of those things where GTA 6 doesn't look great because it's like pushing tech further than other games have ever done. It looks great because there's just a fantastic amount of attention to detail. And just every shot has every tiny detail is like mapped out. And it's going to be interesting to see how this launches because it was announced for PS5 and Xbox Series S and X. It was not announced for PC. PC version of GTA 5 ended up coming later, but you'd think that would be more standardized now, like PC would be a lead platform for a game like this, but it looks like that is not the case.
Yeah, but it's console exclusive so far.
Yeah. Well, I think they're going to drop the PS5 and Xbox Series X and it's going to be a Switch exclusive. Not Switch 2. Switch exclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure, that's definitely happening.
Oh, I didn't finish yet. Cloud streaming.
Oh, yeah. Cloud streaming, yeah.
It's tied to the whole OD universe that Kojima's doing.
There you go.
But yeah, GTA 6, man. I mean, what else to say? This has been one of the most hotly anticipated trailers for anything ever. And when the trailer came out, it was beating out other trailers combined,
Mm-hmm.
I forgot somebody had mentioned it like in one day, it had beat out and they mentioned like 4 major video game trailers like combined.
Yeah.
The total amount of views that all of those trailers had combined behind, it beat out in one day.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. GTA 6, it's pretty much the biggest franchise in gaming, right?
Yeah, it is.
And they'll continue to make it for, 10 years, like they did with GTA 5.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
But that is it for our news section and the rest of our podcast. So thank you everybody for listening. Next week, we are going to be talking about Invincible. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, that's what we were going to talk about last week, but we ended up taking that week off. So now we're going to be finally getting around to Invincible Season 2, the first 4 episodes, because that's all that's out for Season 2. We're going to be talking about that next week, so stay tuned for that. Thank you everybody for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I am at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to our website and open up the container story for any of our podcast episodes, scroll down to the last 2 paragraphs there. You're going to find all of the relevant links to all of our social accounts, our RSS feed, podcast, all that's there. You can also subscribe to the podcast in your favorite podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcasts or Pocket Cast, and the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. Thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the On-Screen Podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.